Everyone knows Van Gogh's Sunflowers, but what if I told you that these seemingly cheerful paintings were actually created during some of the darkest moments of his life, and that every brushstroke carries a hidden message about friendship, death, and the desperate human need for connection? I'm Oleg G from Art Explained Simply and Quickly, and today we're diving deep into the true meaning behind Van Gogh's most famous series, paintings that appear simple on the surface but reveal profound truths about the human condition when you know how to read them. These aren't just pretty flowers in a vase. Van Gogh painted his Sunflowers series during two crucial periods of his life. First in Paris in 1887, then in Arles in 1888, and each version tells a different story about hope, disappointment, artistic ambition, and the crushing weight of isolation. By the time you finish this video, you'll never look at these golden blooms the same way again. Let's start with a fundamental question. Why sunflowers? Van Gogh didn't choose this subject randomly. In the 1880s, sunflowers carried specific symbolic meanings that his contemporary audience would have understood immediately. They represented devotion, loyalty, and adoration, qualities that perfectly reflected Van Gogh's own desperate longing for human connection. But they also symbolized the cycle of life and death, as these massive blooms follow the sun's path across the sky before withering and dying. The first clue to understanding these paintings lies in understanding Van Gogh's emotional state when he created them. The Paris series from 1887 emerged during a period of relative optimism. Vincent had been living with his brother Theo, surrounded by fellow artists like Toulouse-Lautrec and Émile Bernard. For perhaps the first time in his adult life, he felt part of an artistic community. These early sunflower paintings radiate with hope. The flowers are fresh, vibrant, full of life. But it's the Arles series from 1888 that reveals the true emotional depths of Van Gogh's sunflower obsession. He had moved to the south of France seeking better light and cheaper living. But more importantly, he was trying to establish his own artistic colony. He dreamed of creating a community where artists could live and work together, supporting each other's creative endeavors. The sunflowers he painted in Arles were meant to decorate the bedroom of his hoped-for collaborator, Paul Gauguin. Think about that for a moment. Van Gogh spent weeks painting these sunflowers specifically to welcome another artist into his home and his life. Each painting was an act of friendship, a gesture of hospitality, a visiopia for companionship. He wrote to his brother Theo, "I am painting with the gusto of a Marseillais eating bouillabaisse, which won't surprise you when you know that I am painting large sunflowers." The enthusiasm in his words masks a deeper desperation. The need to create something beautiful enough to attract and keep a friend. If you're finding this video helpful, please hit like to help the YouTube algorithm push my videos to other art lovers. Want to support further? Check out my affordable membership options with exclusive perks, or simply use it to say thanks. YouTube monetization isn't generous, and your support helps me create content like this every week. Every bit of support helps. The symbolism becomes even more poignant when you consider the sunflower's botanical characteristics. These flowers are heliotropic. They turn their faces to follow the sun throughout the day. Van Gogh saw himself in this behavior, constantly seeking the light, whether artistic, spiritual, or human. But mature sunflowers lose this ability to turn, becoming fixed in place, heavy with seeds, their heads drooping toward the earth. This progression from dynamic life to static death mirrors Van Gogh's own journey through these paintings. Let's examine the specific works in detail because each painting in the series carries its own emotional weight. The first Arles version shows 15 sunflowers in a simple earthenware vase. These flowers are at various stages of bloom, some fresh and vibrant, others beginning to wilt, a few completely spent. This isn't botanical accuracy, it's psychological allegory. Van Gogh is showing us the full cycle of hope and disappointment that define his relationships with other people. The second version, with 14 sunflowers, shows a subtle but crucial shift. The overall composition is similar, but the flowers appear more fragile, more vulnerable. The yellows are slightly muted, the browns more prominent. Van Gogh painted this version after Gauguin had agreed to come to Arles, but before he actually arrived. The anticipation mixed with anxiety is visible in every brushstroke. The third version, with 12 sunflowers, was painted while Gauguin was actually staying with Van Gogh. Paradoxically, these flowers appear the most distressed of the series. The petals are more scattered, the composition less stable. This wasn't the joyful collaboration Van Gogh had imagined. Gauguin was critical of his host's technique, dismissive of his provincial enthusiasm. The sunflowers reflect this tension. They're beautiful but agitated, golden but somehow sad. Van Gogh's choice of yellow as the dominant color carries profound meaning beyond mere aesthetic preference. In his letters, he wrote extensively about yellow as the color of divine love, of spiritual illumination, of the sun itself. But yellow also represented madness in 19th century color symbolism. The yellow of jaundice, of sickness, of mental instability. Van Gogh was playing with this duality, using yellow to express both his highest aspirations and his deepest fears. The painting technique itself carries emotional content. Notice how Van Gogh applies the paint so thickly in places that it creates actual texture. This technique, called impasto, makes the flowers seem to emerge from the canvas into three-dimensional space. But this isn't just artistic showmanship. The thick paint represents Van Gogh's urgent need to make his feelings tangible, to literally build emotion into the surface of his paintings. Each ridge of paint is a gesture of desperate communication. The brushstrokes tell their own story. In the backgrounds, Van Gogh uses long, flowing strokes that create rhythm and movement. But in the flowers themselves, the strokes become more agitated, more individual. Look closely at the flower centers. Those swirling patterns of paint mirror the anxiety and energy that Van Gogh felt but couldn't express in words. The technique becomes a visual diary of his psychological state. The vases holding the sunflowers deserve attention too. These aren't elegant crystal or decorative ceramics, but simple, rough earthenware. The kind of practical vessel a poor artist would actually own. Van Gogh could have idealized these containers, but he chose to paint them honestly, complete with chips and imperfections. This humble setting emphasizes that these paintings aren't about wealth or status, but about finding beauty and meaning in ordinary circumstances. The way Van Gogh signs these paintings reveals another layer of meaning. His signature appears prominently, almost aggressively, as if he's claiming ownership not just of the artwork, but of the emotions it represents. For an artist who sold only one painting in his lifetime, who was constantly dismissed and ignored, these bold signatures represent an act of defiance, a declaration that his feelings and his vision matter. The tragic irony of the Sunflower series becomes clear when we follow the story to its conclusion. Gauguin did come to Arles, but the collaboration was a disaster. The two artists clashed constantly over technique, philosophy, and personality. After just 2 months, Gauguin announced his intention to leave. It was on the night before Gauguin's departure that Van Gogh suffered his first major mental breakdown and cut off part of his ear. The sunflowers, painted as symbols of welcome and friendship, became witnesses to rejection and madness. But the story doesn't end there. After Gauguin left, Van Gogh continued to paint sunflowers, but now they carried different meanings. The post-breakdown versions show flowers that are more isolated, more introspective. The vibrant community of blooms becomes a study in solitude. These later paintings suggest that Van Gogh had learned to find meaning in loneliness, to create beauty without the need for external validation. The Sunflower series also reflects Van Gogh's complex relationship with his own artistic legacy. He desperately wanted recognition during his lifetime, but was constantly rejected by critics and the public. The Sunflowers represent his attempt to create something undeniably beautiful, something that even his harshest critics couldn't dismiss. In this, he succeeded beyond his wildest dreams, but tragically, not in time for him to witness it. The symbolic resonance of these paintings extends to Van Gogh's spiritual beliefs. Raised in a deeply religious family, he had briefly worked as a lay preacher before becoming an artist. The sunflowers can be read as secular icons, natural forms that point toward transcendence. Their golden color evokes religious art's traditional halos and divine light. Van Gogh was creating a new kind of religious art for a secular age, finding the sacred in nature rather than in traditional biblical subjects. The economic context adds another layer of meaning to these works. Van Gogh was painting expensive subjects with expensive materials while living in desperate poverty. Yellow paint was particularly costly in the 1880s, and especially the chrome yellows that give these paintings their distinctive glow. Every brushstroke represented a financial sacrifice, making these paintings literal investments of Van Gogh's limited resources in the pursuit of beauty and meaning. The psychological interpretation of the Sunflower series has evolved over the decades. Early critics saw them as simple, still lifes, pleasant decorations without deeper significance. But modern psychological analysis reveals them as complex expressions of Van Gogh's mental state. The flower's various stages of bloom and decay can be read as metaphors for his cycling between hope and despair, mania and depression. The paintings become visual mood rings, recording his psychological weather with scientific precision. The influence of Japanese art on Van Gogh's sunflower paintings reveals another layer of meaning. He was deeply influenced by Japanese woodblock prints, which often featured flowers as subjects for meditation on the transit nature of life. Van Gogh's sunflowers carry this philosophical weight. They're not just decorative objects, but contemplations on mortality, beauty, and the passage of time. The Eastern concept of mono no aware, the bittersweet awareness of the impermanence of all things, permeates these seemingly Western paintings. The color relationships in the Sunflower series demonstrate Van Gogh's sophisticated understanding of emotional psychology through visual means. He doesn't just paint sunflowers, he paints the feeling of sunflowers. The complementary colors, yellow flowers against blue-violet backgrounds, create visual vibration that makes the paintings seem alive with energy. But this isn't just technical skill, it's emotional manipulation. Van Gogh uses color theory to make viewers feel the joy and sadness he experienced while painting. The series' relationship to Van Gogh's other flower paintings reveals an evolution in his symbolic thinking. Earlier flower studies tend to be more naturalistic, more concerned with botanical accuracy. But the sunflowers represent a breakthrough into pure emotional expression through natural subjects. He's not painting what sunflowers look like. He's painting what sunflowers mean to him. Hope, friendship, the search for light and darkness. The modern reception of these paintings has transformed their meaning in ways Van Gogh couldn't have anticipated. They've become shorthand for artistic genius, reproduced on everything from coffee mugs to shower curtains. This mass reproduction has simultaneously made them accessible to millions while potentially diminishing their impact. The challenge for contemporary viewers is to see past the commercial familiarity to rediscover the raw, emotional power that made them famous in the first place. The theft and recovery of some sunflower paintings adds another chapter to their meaning. When artworks are stolen, they become more than just paintings. They become symbols of cultural heritage, national identity, and the value societies place on beauty. The sunflowers have survived not just Van Gogh's personal struggles, but wars, thefts, and the passage of time, accumulating historical meaning with each challenge they survive. Contemporary neuroscience offers new ways of understanding why these paintings affect us so powerfully. Research suggests that the bold colors and dynamic brushstrokes activate reward centers in our brains, creating positive, emotional responses that operate below conscious awareness. Van Gogh, working purely on intuition, had discovered techniques that modern science confirms as neurologically compelling. The sunflowers work on us at a biological level, which helps explain their enduring popularity across cultures and generations. If you're moved by art that transforms personal struggle into universal beauty, hit that subscribe button right now and join our community of art explorers. Every week on Art Explained Simply and Quickly, we uncover the deeper meanings behind history's most powerful artworks. What do Van Gogh's sunflowers mean to you? Do you see hope or sadness, friendship or loneliness, life or death in these golden blooms? Share your interpretation in the comments below. Your personal response is exactly what Van Gogh hoped to inspire when he painted these masterpieces of human emotion. If this video helped you see the profound meanings hidden in these familiar paintings, give it a thumbs up. It helps more people discover the incredible stories behind art history's greatest works. See you in the next exploration.